They took rock and roll and made it heavier, darker, louder. From Birmingham factory towns to the frozen landscapes of Scandinavia, these bands didn't just push boundaries, they obliterated them and built something entirely new from the wreckage. Today, we're counting down the top 10 most influential metal bands of all time. This isn't a list built on opinions or nostalgia. This ranking emerged from a rigorous methodology that scored each band across 4 critical categories. We evaluated innovation, the sounds and techniques they created that did not exist before. We measured legacy and longevity, how long their innovations continued to influence other bands. We assessed cultural impact, their broader significance, and mainstream reach. And we compiled critical acclaim, the professional consensus on their quality and importance. Each category was weighted, tallied, and ranked to create something as close to objective truth as you can get when measuring the titans of heavy metal. Before we dive in, do not forget to subscribe and hit that like button, and stay until the end. We have honorable mentions that nearly cracked the top 10. Let's get heavy. Number 10, Megadeth. When Dave Mustaine walked away from Metallica in 1983, he didn't just nurse a grudge. He channeled it into something faster, more technical, and angrier than anything the metal world had heard. That fury became Megadeth, and what they created was technical thrash metal at its absolute peak. Rust in peace. If there is a Mount Rushmore of thrash albums, that 1990 masterpiece is carved into it. Holy Wars. The Punishment Due opens with one of the most intricate, blazing guitar passages in metal history. Mustaine and Marty Friedman's dual guitar work didn't just shred, it told stories, weaving jazz influences and Middle Eastern scales into thrash metal's framework. Dave Ellefson's bass lines functioned as a third melodic voice, while Nick Menza's drumming was technical precision weaponized. For over 40 years, Megadeth has proven that metal could be intellectually complex without sacrificing aggression. Their lyrics tackled political corruption, nuclear war, and government conspiracy when most metal bands were still singing about partying. They influenced every progressive metal and technical death metal band that followed, showing that speed and complexity could coexist with crushing heaviness. Technical thrash perfected, over 40 years of uncompromising vision. That's Megadeth. Number 9, Pantera. By 1990, thrash metal had hit a wall. The breakneck tempos and technical wizardry were impressive, but something was missing. Raw, stripped down power. Then Pantera dropped Cowboys from Hell, and everything changed. Dimebag Darrell didn't play guitar. He wielded it like a sledgehammer wrapped in barbed wire. That tone, that utterly distinctive, crushing guitar sound became the blueprint every heavy band of the 90s chased. Phil Anselmo's vocals were pure aggression, shifting from guttural roars to anguished screams. Rex Brown's bass and Vinnie Paul's drumming created a rhythmic foundation so heavy, so groove-oriented, that headbanging wasn't optional. It was involuntary, vulgar display of power. In 1992, cemented what they'd created, groove metal. Songs like Walk and Mouth for War stripped away thrash's complexity and left only the heaviest, most punishing riffs imaginable. The breakdowns, those devastating slow motion passages where the bottom drops out and the riff just crushes you, were Pantera's signature, and they redefined what heavy meant in the post-thrash era. Every modern metalcore band, every deathcore breakdown, every gent riff traces back to what Pantera pioneered. Over 30 years later, groove metal is still everywhere, still defining how contemporary metal sounds. They didn't play it heavy, they made heavy heavier. Number 8, Venom, Newcastle, England, 1981. 3 guys with minimal technical skill, maximum attitude, and a vision of something darker than anything metal had attempted. They called their album black metal, and in doing so, they named an entire genre that would not fully exist for another decade. Before Venom, metal was dark, sure, but it was Black Sabbath's occult blues or Judas Priest's leather-clad power. Venom took it somewhere genuinely sinister. The production was raw, almost deliberately crude. The bass-driven assault of Kronos, the razor wire guitar of Mantas, and the primitive drumming of Abaddon created a wall of chaotic noise that felt genuinely threatening. The satanic imagery was not cartoonish, it was systematic, deliberate, shocking. The songs Black Metal, Countess Bathory, and Witching Hour were not trying to impress listeners with musicianship. They were trying to scare you, to create atmosphere through sheer, unpolished aggression. And it worked. When Norwegian teenagers in the late 1980s heard Venom, they heard a template, Mayhem, Dark Throne, Burzum, Emperor. The entire second wave of black metal traces directly back to what Venom pioneered. Over 40 years later, black metal is still a vital, thriving subgenre, and every blast beat, every lo-fi production choice, every corpse-painted face owes something to three guys from Newcastle who decided that metal should be genuinely dangerous, raw, primitive, revolutionary. Number 7. Motorhead. If you tried to explain Motorhead to someone who had never heard them, you might say they were not quite metal, not quite punk. They were the furious, leather-clad bridge between both worlds. And at the center of it all was Lemmy, the man who turned the bass guitar into a lead instrument and lived every rock and roll cliche while somehow transcending all of them. From 1975 until Lemmy's death in 2015, Motorhead played one kind of music: fast, loud, and utterly relentless. That bass tone, overdriven and distorted and functioning more like a rhythm guitar, combined with Fast Eddie Clarke's buzzsaw guitar and Phil Taylor, known as Filthy Animal, on thundering drums to create a wall of sound that was pure velocity. Ace of Spades, Overkill, Bomber. These were not songs you analyzed, they were songs you survived. But here's what makes Motorhead essential. They showed thrash metal how to be fast. Metallica, Slayer, Megadeth, Anthrax, all of them cite Motorhead as the blueprint for speed metal, the punk attitude, the refusal to compromise, the raw energy. Lemmy proved that metal did not need to be technical or progressive to be powerful. It just needed to be honest, loud, and played like your life depended on it. 50 years of influence. The bridge between punk's attitude and metal's power, and a frontman who became an icon for never ever selling out. That's Motorhead. Born to lose, live to win. Florida, 1983. A teenager named Chuck Schuldiner started a band that would invent an entire genre, then spend the next 18 years constantly evolving it, refusing to stay in the box he had created. Death did not just play death metal, they invented it. Scream Bloody Gore in 1987 took thrash's speed and made it heavier, darker, more extreme. The growled vocals, the blast beats, the utterly brutal guitar tone. This was metal pushed to its absolute limit, but Chuck Schuldiner was not content to repeat himself. With each album, Death evolved. Leprosy added melody, spiritual healing incorporated social commentary, Human brought in jazz fusion elements and progressive structures. By the time Symbolic arrived in 1995, Death was creating progressive death metal, complex time signatures, philosophical lyrics, and guitar work that was technically stunning while remaining crushingly heavy. Chuck proved that extreme metal could be intellectually sophisticated, emotionally resonant, and still absolutely punishing. When Chuck Schuldiner died in 2001, metal lost its most innovative mind, but his legacy is immortal. Every death metal band that followed, from Cannibal Corpse to Opeth to Gojira, builds on the foundation Death created. The genre he invented is still thriving over 20 years after his death, still evolving, still vital. Chuck Schuldiner did not just create death metal, he showed it could grow, think, and never stop pushing forward. Number 5, Slayer, June 1986, Rain and Blood, 29 minutes, 10 songs, and metal would never be the same. Slayer took thrash metal and asked a simple question: how fast can we go? How extreme can this get? The answer was terrifying. Tom Araya's bass and vocals, Jeff Hanneman and Kerry King's dueling guitar assault, and Dave Lombardo's absolutely superhuman drumming created music that was faster, more aggressive, and darker than anything that had come before. Angel of Death opens with that scream and those riffs, and for the next 3.5 minutes, you are in free fall. But Slayer wasn't just fast, they were ominous. Hanneman's riffs drew from horror movies and genuine darkness. The lyrics tackled war atrocities, serial killers, and the occult with unflinching intensity. This wasn't entertainment, it was confrontational, dangerous, genuinely extreme. And the influence? Absolute. Death metal, black metal, grindcore, every extreme metal subgenre that followed owes its DNA to Slayer. The tremolo-picked riffs, the blast beats, the unrelenting aggression. Slayer showed that metal could go beyond heavy, beyond fast, into territory that genuinely pushed boundaries. Nearly 40 years after Rain and Blood, it remains the extreme metal Bible. No other thrash band went as far, as fast, or as dark. Slayer didn't just influence extreme metal, they defined it. Speed, darkness, no compromise. Number 4, Iron Maiden. When the new wave of British heavy metal exploded in the late 70s, one band rose above all others to define what epic metal could be. That band was Iron Maiden, and for over 45 years they have proven that metal can be melodic, theatrical, technically brilliant, and absolutely crushing all at once. Bruce Dickinson's operatic vocals soar over galloping rhythms that are so iconic they are simply called the Maiden Gallop. The real genius is the 3-guitar attack, with Dave Murray, Adrian Smith, and Janet Gers weaving intricate harmonies that function almost like classical compositions. Songs like Hallowed Be Thy Name, Rhyme of the Ancient Mariner, and Power Slave are not just tracks, they are 7 to 13-minute journeys with movements, recurring themes, and narratives. Steve Harris's bass drives everything, melodic and powerful, while Nico McBrain's drumming provides the foundation for these epic structures. And Eddie, the grotesque iconic mascot plastered on every album cover, became one of music's most recognizable symbols. But here's what makes Maiden extraordinary. They are still relevant. In 2025, they are still selling out stadiums, still releasing albums that chart globally, and still influencing every power metal and melodic death metal band on the planet. Their influence spans from Metallica to Avenged Sevenfold to countless European metal bands who cite Maiden as the template for combining melody with heaviness. Over 45 years, 16 studio albums, global domination, Iron Maiden proved that metal could be sophisticated and savage, historic and heavy, melodic and absolutely merciless. Up the irons. Number 3, Judas Priest. If Black Sabbath invented heavy metal, Judas Priest codified what it should sound like, look like, and mean for the next 5 decades. Everything you think of when you picture metal, the leather, the studs, the twin lead guitars, the operatic high-pitched vocals, Judas Priest built that template. Rob Halford's voice is one of metal's greatest instruments. That range, those soaring highs, the ability to shift from melodic singing to primal screams, he set the standard every metal vocalist since has chased. KK Downing and Glenn Tipton's twin guitar attack created the blueprint for metal guitar. Harmony leads, dual solos, riffs that were both technical and immediately memorable. Breaking the law, you've got another thing coming, Painkiller. These aren't just songs. They are the genetic code of heavy metal. But Priest did more than create a sound. They created an aesthetic. The leather and studs look that Rob Halford pioneered became metal's uniform. The attitude, the rebellion, the working class British toughness. Judas Priest showed metal how to present itself to the world. 50 years later, their innovations are still the foundation. Every power metal band, every traditional heavy metal act, every singer who has ever hit a high note in tight leather pants. They are all following the roadmap Judas Priest drew in the 70s and perfected through Screaming for Vengeance, British Steel, and Painkiller. They didn't just play heavy metal, they defined what heavy metal is. Number 2, Metallica. Over 120 million albums sold. They are the biggest selling metal band in history. Multiple Grammy Awards. Stadium tours that gross hundreds of millions of dollars. And somehow, despite all that mainstream success, they remain the gateway band that introduces millions of people to heavy metal every single year. In 1983, Metallica took the speed and aggression of the new wave of British heavy metal, added punk's raw energy, and created thrash metal. Kill 'Em All was fast and furious, but it was Master of Puppets in 1986 that changed everything. That album proved thrash could be complex, sophisticated, and emotionally powerful. Battery, Master of Puppets, Welcome Home Sanitarium. These songs were longer, more intricate, and heavier than anything in metal. Then came the Black Album in 1991. Metallica took thrash metal to the mainstream, selling over 30 million copies worldwide, and proving that extreme music could connect with stadium-sized audiences. Enter Sandman, The Unforgiven, Nothing Else Matters. These songs made metal accessible without compromising its power. But here is what makes Metallica untouchable: influence. James Hetfield's downstroke rhythm guitar technique is copied by every metal guitarist. Lars Ulrich's arrangements, Kirk Hammett's solos, Robert Trujillo's bass. These are the sounds of modern metal. Every metalcore band, every thrash revival act, every kid picking up a guitar and learning one, they are all building on what Metallica created. Over 40 years later, they are still selling out stadiums. Still the band that defines what it means to be a metal band in 2025. Cultural dominance, critical acclaim, innovation, and influence. Metallica has it all. On February 13, 1970, in Birmingham, England, 4 working-class guys from a factory town released an album that sounded like nothing the world had ever heard. Rain, church bells, then Tony Iommi's guitar, down-tuned, ominous, evil. In that moment, heavy metal is born. Black Sabbath didn't just start a genre, they invented it from nothing. Before Sabbath, rock music was about rebellion and love, peace and good times. Ozzy Osbourne, Tony Iommi, Geezer Butler, and Bill Ward brought darkness. They wrote about war, depression, drug addiction, the occult, the things people were afraid to talk about. The music matched the themes, slower, heavier, more menacing than anything before it. Tony Iommi's guitar work, shaped by a factory accident that took the tips of 2 fingers, created the template every heavy guitarist still follows. That down-tuned, crushing tone, those riffs, Iron Man, War Pigs, Children of the Grave, Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath, they are the foundation of metal. Geezer Butler's bass added depth and darkness. Bill Ward's jazz-influenced drumming gave it swing and power, and Ozzy's voice, that haunting working-class wail, gave it soul. Paranoid, Master of Reality, Volume 4, Sabbath. Bloody Sabbath, the first 4 albums created the blueprint for doom metal, stoner rock, thrash, death metal, black metal. Every heavy genre that followed traces back to Black Sabbath. Without them, heavy metal does not exist. The entire landscape of heavy music starts here. 55 years later, every metal band on Earth still references Sabbath. They are the beginning, the foundation, the perfect score. Innovation, 30 out of 30. Legacy and longevity, 20 out of 20. Cultural impact, 25 out of 25. Critical acclaim, 25 out of 25. They did not just create heavy metal, they created the vocabulary, the sound, the darkness, and the power that every band since has built upon. Number 1, always, Black Sabbath. Before we go, 5 bands that barely missed the top 10 deserve recognition. Mayhem defined second wave black metal completely. The mysterious Dom Sathanas remains one of extreme metal's most important albums, and their influence on atmospheric black metal is undeniable. Opeth pioneered progressive death metal with acoustic electric dynamics and a jazz folk fusion. For over 30 years, they have shown that extreme metal can be both brutal and beautiful. Celtic Frost were avant-garde metal pioneers. Their Morbid Tales and Two Megatherion influenced doom, death, and black metal because they were willing to experiment and break every rule. Bathory was Korthon's one-man project that invented Viking metal and helped pioneer atmospheric black metal, 2 separate innovations that are still thriving today. Napalm Death created grindcore, introduced blast beats to extreme music, and fused political hardcore with metal extremity in ways that still resonate. There you have it, the top 10 most influential metal bands of all time, determined through systematic analysis of innovation, legacy, cultural impact, and critical acclaim. These bands did not just make heavy music, they created entirely new forms of expression, built genres from nothing, and influenced every metal band that has followed. What do you think? Did we get it right? Who would you have ranked differently? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Let us debate. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into metal history, subscribe and hit that notification bell so you do not miss our next ranking. Until then, keep it heavy and keep it loud.